Hey everybody, Andrew back with some juicy knowledge bombs. Today we're going to be talking about ANC. But first, I'm sure you've noticed things look a little different, and well, it's been a hot second. Well, that's actually because I recently moved. And that with the whole global pandemic thing and life being generally busy, I had to take a break. But I am back and I'm ready to start hanging out with all you lovely people again. So without further delay, welcome back to Tay Tech. So what the heck is ANC? ANC, or Active Noise Cancellation, sometimes known as Adaptive Noise Cancellation, is a feature of some headphones and speakers that attempt to manipulate sound waves to reduce or completely cancel out unintended noise. So let's talk a little bit about sound waves. What is a sound wave? Without getting too far into the weeds, a sound wave is a pressure wave that vibrates all the particles in the air around it, creating sound. There are a number of factors that determine whether or not we are able to perceive this sound, and it's the manipulation of a few of these characteristics in particular that make up the core concept behind ANC. While there are a ton of characteristics of sound waves, we're going to focus on just a few important ones here. The first is wavelength. This is the distance between the crest of a wave. This can generally be seen from left to right. The second is amplitude. This is the measurement of the particles that are displaced around the wave. Under normal circumstances, the more energy the wave has, the more particles are displaced. This can generally be seen from top to bottom. And then third and finally, we have frequency. Very simply put, this is the number of times a wave repeats in a given period of time. Why is all of this so important? Well, because these are all factors that determine a sound wave's phase. Okay, so what on earth is phase? It's important to understand that waves are cyclical in nature and have repeating patterns. With this knowledge, phase is quite easy to understand. It is simply a measurement of how far along a waveform is in its current cycle. You will hear phase spoken about frequently by recording musicians and audio engineers, and there's a reason for that. When two waveforms share the same phase, aka when their frequency and wavelength overlap, the sound you hear will be amplified. Conversely, if the waves are of opposite phase, then they'll cancel each other out, and the sound will be quieter, and even silent, assuming that the waves share the same amplitude. Because of phase, you have to constantly be monitoring audio while recording to ensure a good balance and prevent phase issues, amongst a lot of other issues. When waves of the opposite phase cancel one another out, we can call this phase cancellation. And while ANC uses a few different techniques, it is primarily this principle that powers the feature. Let's take a look at phase cancellation in action. Alrighty, so let's check out phase inversion in action. So what we have here is an instrument. This instrument has two synthesizers. One of them is muted. They're the exact same synthesizer except for this little guy on one of them called the tool. And I'm just going to use this to invert the phase, as we discussed earlier. Other than that, it is not doing anything. Okay, so let's go ahead and play a sound here. Now, I'm going to play this again and pay attention to the waveform because I'm going to unmute it with the duplicate synthesizer. And what you'll see is it'll actually amplify that signal. It'll make it louder. You'll hear it and you'll see it. So let's take a look at that. Great. So now let's take a look at the inverse of that. Let's invert the phase of one side. Essentially, let's take the left and right, and let's put exact opposite waveforms on either side of the left and right channel. Okay. When I invert the left side, see, no audio at all. Now let me invert both of them so they're both flipped. Ah, we have audio again because we've matched up the waves again.
And that's a pretty basic level of phase cancellation. It gets quite a bit more complicated than that. And when you are making songs, things like that, you may be trying to just cancel out certain frequency ranges or maybe just a sound or two, and it gets pretty complicated. But as you can see, this is the basic principle. So ANC kind of takes this to the umpteenth level, right? It's going to take all of this audio, try to process it, try to invert the phase to get rid of tons of sounds, but it's going to try not to clash with your current audio, what you're listening to, because if you were to completely invert all the phase, then you would end up probably overlapping with some of the audio inside of your headphones, and you would make your music sound terrible. So there's a lot of really complicated stuff going on, but I hope this helps kind of give you at least a little bit of an understanding as to how phase cancellation works.
Okay, so now we understand how phase works. How does ANC work? There are a few different ways to implement ANC, but modern headphones generally work by using one mic or an array of mics to capture the sound around them. This sound is then processed through a number of algorithms that will attempt to generate a wave with opposite phase, and then combine this with the music you are listening to cancel out, or at least reduce the outside noise to a level in which it is imperceptible to the listener. You may be wondering, what about amplitude? Well, this is where things get tricky. It is important to keep in mind that simply putting headphones in or over your ears creates a seal that will help reduce the amount of sound you hear. Additionally, the sound of the audio you are listening to itself will drown out plenty of background noise. With aggressive noise cancellation, the phase can actually cause the music you're listening to be affected negatively. So it is important that with the algorithms being used, they're optimal and provide enough noise cancellation that you don't hear noise from the outside world, but not so much that it destroys the audio you're trying to listen to. Because of this, ANC won't always attempt to match the amplitude or phase exactly. Instead, ANC will oftentimes try to find the best balance between how much audio it is reducing from the outside world and how good the audio you're hearing is, so that to most people, or the average consumer, you really can't tell a difference, or at least not much of one that it's going to prevent you from loving the headphones. So anyway, that is how ANC works. That's all from us today. We definitely encourage you to follow us on Twitter, join our Discord channel. It is a young channel. There's not a lot of people in there, but we hope to grow this community over time, so we definitely encourage you to check that out. And sound off in the comments if you have any ideas for future videos or anything that you want to learn about. I'm thinking about doing a whole series continuing off of the cloud gaming server that we built. So you can check that out up here, and definitely let me know if you'd be interested in continuing down that rabbit hole. Thanks, guys. Bye.